Without providing any proof, Elon said USAID is a criminal organization.
Elon Musk has never been one to back down, and this time, he's uncovered something that could change everything. His latest revelation about USAID has sent shockwaves through governments and global institutions.
One of the first victims Elon Musk has decided to sacrifice to the ever-ravenous gods of chaos.
The evidence he's brought forward isn't just surprising.
Today, President Donald Trump calling USAID fraud, making that comment while meeting with the Prime Minister.
It's raising serious questions about how billions in taxpayer dollars are really being used. Is USAID truly about humanitarian aid, or is there something deeper at play? Join us as we dive into Musk's shocking findings, the hidden power struggles, and what this could mean for the future.
To be clear, in shutting down, which we're in the process of doing, shutting down USAID.
Where did the money go? Elon Musk just set the internet on fire with a bold claim. He says the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, is beyond saving. But here's where things get even crazier. He's not just criticizing it, he's suggesting it should be completely shut down. As you know, USAID is one of the biggest organizations responsible for sending U.S. foreign aid worldwide. It handles billions of taxpayer dollars, funding everything from disaster relief to political programs in other countries. But Musk isn't buying it. He believes too much of that money is being wasted, or worse, misused. Could he be right? And if so, what does this mean for the future of U.S. aid efforts? Keep watching as we break it down. At the center of this controversy is a shocking $21 million that was supposedly meant to increase voter participation in India.
$21 million for India elections.
But here's the catch. Official reports say that money never actually made it to India. Instead, it was redirected to political engagement programs in Bangladesh.
Related project in India. In fact, officials have confirmed that a $21 million contract was awarded to Bangladesh.
Now think about that for a second. This isn't pocket change, it's millions of taxpayer dollars. How does something like this even happen? Was it a simple miscalculation, or is there something more serious going on behind the scenes? Elon Musk isn't the only one asking these questions. President Donald Trump has also spoken out against USAID, calling it a waste of money that needs to be completely restructured. Both men believe foreign aid money is being funneled into unnecessary programs, sometimes even landing in the wrong hands. And here's something to consider. Whenever billions of dollars are in play, corruption is never far behind. Could USAID be another example of a broken system where taxpayer money is being misused without proper oversight? Elon Musk and Donald Trump have also raised questions about the people in charge of USAID. One of the names that keeps coming up, former USAID Administrator Samantha Power. There have been rumors that some top officials at USAID may have significantly increased their wealth while in office. The accusation is simple. If USAID is handling billions of dollars, is it possible that some of the people in charge found ways to personally benefit? But here's the twist. Fact checkers have looked into these claims and found no clear evidence that Power or any other officials illegally profited. So are these accusations just a way to discredit USAID? Or is there more to this story that hasn't been uncovered yet? Either way, the damage has been done. USAID is under scrutiny like never before, and Musk's involvement has only amplified the controversy. Musk isn't just calling out problems, he's offering a solution, and his solution is as drastic as it gets. Shut USAID down completely. He argues that USAID is so broken that fixing it would be a waste of time. He believes the entire agency is outdated, inefficient, and beyond repair. Instead of trying to reform it, he wants the U.S. government to redirect those billions of dollars elsewhere, preferably into American infrastructure and innovation. And this idea isn't coming out of nowhere. It fits right in with Trump's America First strategy, which calls for reducing U.S. involvement in foreign aid and focusing more on domestic issues. But here's the big question. If USAID is eliminated, what happens to the millions of people who rely on it? Many countries depend on U.S. aid for disaster relief, healthcare, and even food supplies. Without USAID, would those funds be redirected to other programs, or would they disappear entirely? This is why Musk's proposal is so controversial. Some believe it's a necessary move to cut government waste, while others think it would have devastating consequences for vulnerable communities around the world. And just when you thought this story couldn't get any weirder, something bizarre happened. A deepfake video of Elon Musk and Donald Trump appeared on government cafeteria TVs, showing the two making statements they never actually said. The video was so realistic that it sparked a flood of conspiracy theories. Who made it? And more importantly, why? Some believe it was an attempt to discredit Musk and Trump's stance against USAID. Others think it was meant to create confusion, making it harder to tell real news from fake news. Either way, it only added fuel to an already heated debate. Now, the battle over USAID is raging more than ever before. Musk's explosive comments have forced the agency into the spotlight, and people are now questioning whether it's truly serving its purpose. Some lawmakers are even calling for an independent audit to investigate where all the money is actually going. If corruption is found, it could completely change how U.S. foreign aid is handled in the future. The deeper you dig, the darker it gets. And as more evidence surfaces, USAID's problems are only beginning. Keep watching, we're just getting started. The aftermath, USAID's secrets unravel. Elon Musk's confidence in calling out USAID didn't come out of nowhere. Some believe he had access to private intelligence reports, sensitive documents that weren't meant for the public. If true, it would explain why he spoke with such certainty, as though he had seen undeniable proof. But that raises an even bigger question: how did he get them? USAID operates in politically sensitive regions, moving billions of dollars in aid across the globe. If Musk had access to classified details, he wasn't just making educated guesses. He knew things that even some high-level officials weren't aware of. There are two main theories about how this information reached him. One possibility is a whistleblower. Someone on the inside, tired of the secrecy, decided it was time to expose what was really happening. If that's the case, it means there's someone deep within the system feeding Musk details that could shake USA to its core. The second theory: Musk's extensive connections within the tech and defense industries. His companies work with government agencies, military contractors, and intelligence networks. Through these partnerships, he may have gained access to reports that were never meant to leave closed-door meetings. Either way, his accusations weren't empty words. He was speaking like a man who had receipts. And that's exactly what made USAID's longtime allies in Congress and the bureaucracy uneasy. Those who had shaped its operations for years and stood to lose the most if Musk's claims led to real investigations. Then there was the fallout. USAID was suddenly in damage control mode. Within weeks of Elon Musk's accusations, over 100 employees were either suspended or fired.
Workers fired or put on leave from USAID were given 15 minutes to grab their stuff and go.
The agency insisted it was part of an internal review, but the timing was impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a handful of low-level workers quietly removed. Some of those let go had been with USAID for decades. Many were in key financial and logistical roles, people responsible for managing aid distribution and funding. USAID has formal policies for addressing policy violations and conflicts of interest. Chapter 109 of their Automated Directive System, ADS, outlines ethical standards, requiring employees to avoid conflicts and report violations. The Office of Inspector General, OIG, also monitors compliance, issuing fraud alerts when necessary. But why now? If everything was business as usual, why would USAID suddenly clean house so aggressively? If Musk's accusations were completely false, why such a drastic response? That's what made this different. It wasn't just a few people being replaced, it was an internal purge, one that suggested something bigger was happening behind the scenes. Then, another layer of the story started to unfold. Musk's claims weren't happening in isolation. They came at a time when U.S. foreign aid policy had already undergone massive shifts. Trump's America First policy had forced agencies like USAID to rethink their operations. Even during his first tenure as president, international aid programs were slashed, frozen, or redirected. Refugee assistance saw major reductions. Medical aid to war zones slowed down. Humanitarian projects that had once been a priority were suddenly placed on hold. But here's the catch. USAID didn't stop operating. Despite budget cuts, it was still functioning at full scale. The question is, how? Where was the funding coming from? And if government money wasn't flowing through official channels, were alternative methods being used? Some experts believe USAID had to find workarounds, using third-party organizations, private contractors, and unconventional financial channels. If Musk's claims are correct, these workarounds may have crossed ethical or legal lines. And if that's the case, who else knew? Were high-ranking officials aware of what was happening? Were these unofficial financial maneuvers an open secret within government circles? It didn't take long for others to start digging. Watchdog groups began reviewing old financial records, looking for inconsistencies. Congressional leaders started asking questions. News outlets scrambled to find inside sources. But the most telling reaction came from USAID itself. Apart from its generic statements about internal reviews, there was silence. No real explanations, no detailed clarifications, just an urgent effort to move on and shift the focus elsewhere. Yet the deeper you dig, the more complicated it gets. USAID wasn't just under scrutiny from Elon Musk. It was now facing potential investigations from multiple directions. And with so many employees suddenly out of work, some were bound to start talking. When people are forced out of a system, especially under suspicious circumstances, they don't always stay silent. If even one former insider decides to come forward with proof, emails, documents, financial records, the entire situation could escalate beyond just accusations. It could turn into a full-blown government scandal. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Musk isn't backing down. So what happens next? Keep watching, there's more. The USAID paradox. Billions spent, but where does it all go? If USAID is spending billions of dollars every year, why do so many global crises remain unresolved? That's the question more people are asking as scrutiny over the agency continues to grow. Hunger, disease, and war still devastate entire regions, despite decades of funding. If this money was being used as intended, shouldn't the world be in a much better place by now? On paper, USAID is one of the most powerful humanitarian organizations in the world. It funds health programs, builds infrastructure, and responds to disasters. But for years, critics have pointed out the uncomfortable truth that money doesn't always end up where it's supposed to. Some believe corruption within recipient countries is to blame. Others suspect mismanagement within USAID itself. And then there's the theory that, in some cases, aid is being used as a political tool rather than genuine relief. But here's where it gets even more controversial. While USAID sends billions overseas, many Americans are struggling at home. Imagine what tens of billions of dollars USAID annual expenditure could do for healthcare in the US. How many hospitals could be built? How many families could receive life-saving treatments without going bankrupt? What about education? Schools across the country lack funding, teachers are underpaid, and students are drowning in debt. Then there's infrastructure, crumbling roads, outdated water systems, and power grids that fail under pressure. The argument isn't that the US shouldn't help others, but when you see American citizens living paycheck to paycheck while billions flow into countries with histories of corruption, it's hard not to question priorities. In fact, polls have shown that a growing number of Americans believe foreign aid should be reduced, with more focus on domestic issues. USAID defenders argue that helping struggling nations ultimately benefits the US by creating stability. But the evidence of that isn't always clear, especially when we look at USAID's history of mismanagement. This isn't the first time USAID has been accused of waste, corruption, or political interference. Over the years, several cases have exposed how money meant for humanitarian aid ended up fueling conflicts, strengthening military regimes, or simply disappearing. When protests erupted across the Middle East during the Arab Spring, USAID was quick to provide assistance. The goal was to promote democracy, support civil rights movements, and help struggling communities. USAID spent over $17 billion in Afghanistan, funding everything from roads to education programs. But over the years, reports surfaced of how millions, if not billions, ended up wasted, stolen, or misused. One of the biggest issues, resources meant for rebuilding the country ended up in the hands of the very groups the US was fighting. Military bases, equipment, and supplies were left behind. And when the US withdrew in 2021, the Taliban seized much of it. USAID had funded numerous programs to strengthen Afghan society, but when the government collapsed, it became clear that much of that money hadn't created long-term stability. Instead, it had fueled an unsustainable system that crumbled the moment foreign forces left. The Haiti earthquake was one of the worst natural disasters in modern history. Hundreds of thousands were killed, and millions were left homeless. The world responded with an outpouring of aid, and USAID played a major role. Over $13 billion was pledged for Haiti's recovery. But here's the shocking part. Years later, most Haitians saw little improvement. Where did the money go? Much of it was funneled through U.S. contractors instead of directly helping Haitian communities. There were reports of poorly built housing projects, delayed food aid, and corruption at nearly every level. Haiti remains one of the poorest nations in the world, and despite billions spent, the country never truly recovered. Instead, political instability and economic struggles continue to define its future. Then there's Venezuela, a country in economic crisis, where USAID's involvement raised serious questions. Officially, the agency provided humanitarian aid to help those suffering under an authoritarian government. But reports surfaced suggesting something more. Some claimed USAID's funding was being used to support opposition groups rather than strictly humanitarian efforts. The Venezuelan government accused the U.S. of using aid as a cover for political interference, fueling conflicts instead of resolving them. While USAID denied the allegations, the situation remains murky. Was this truly about helping people in need, or was aid being used as leverage to push for political change? What connects all these cases? A lack of accountability. Time and time again, USAID has struggled to track where money actually goes. And when billions are involved, even a small percentage of waste or corruption adds up to massive losses. This raises an important question. If these issues have been happening for decades, why hasn't there been a real reform? Some argue that USAID is simply too big, too complex, and too intertwined with global politics to truly change. Others believe that as long as powerful interests benefit from the current system, real transparency will always be just out of reach. It is quite obvious Musk's accusations didn't come from nowhere. Whether he had access to classified reports or just put together pieces others ignored, his claims have struck a nerve. And with growing pressure for answers, the real question is, what will be uncovered next? Stay tuned, because this is far from over. The fight over USAID's future, Musk, J.D. Vance, and Ron Paul weigh in. J.D. Vance never expected his new role as the 50th Vice President of the United States to lead him into one of the biggest financial controversies in modern history. A Marine Corps veteran with a no-nonsense approach, Vance was tasked with assessing USAID's future. But instead of finding ways to improve the agency, he uncovered deep-rooted problems that raised serious concerns. Money meant for disaster relief, refugee programs, and humanitarian aid wasn't just being mismanaged, it was vanishing. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. Something was very wrong. This was exactly the kind of situation Elon Musk had been warning about. For years, he had criticized wasteful spending and government inefficiencies. Now those warnings were turning into a full-blown investigation. Billions of dollars had been allocated to USAID programs, yet many of those projects showed little to no results. Where was the money going? Who was benefiting? And why was there so little oversight? Elon Musk wasted no time making his stance clear. If USAID had nothing to hide, then a full-scale audit should be welcome. But if corruption, mismanagement, or hidden agendas were at play, then it was time for real accountability. He wanted answers, and he wasn't alone. Vance's findings weren't just raising eyebrows, they were creating shockwaves. Musk knew that simply cutting a few programs wouldn't be enough. If USAID was truly bleeding money on this scale, then the agency's entire structure needed to be reconsidered. Could it function with a smaller budget? Should it be absorbed into the State Department? Or was the problem so deep that dismantling USAID altogether was the only solution? As these questions gained traction, another voice entered the conversation, one that had been calling out USAID for years. Ron Paul, former U.S. representative and longtime critic of government overreach, wasn't surprised by the revelations. In fact, he had been warning about these issues for decades. Paul had long argued that USAID was being used for purposes far beyond humanitarian aid. He believed the agency was a tool for political manipulation, often funding groups that aligned with U.S. interests while destabilizing those that didn't. Now with Musk and others bringing fresh attention to the issue, Paul saw an opportunity to expose what he called USAID's hidden agenda. According to Paul, USAID had been quietly influencing foreign governments for years. Instead of simply providing food, water, and medical supplies, the agency had allegedly been funding political movements, shaping elections, and even propping up unstable regimes. If true, this wasn't just a case of mismanagement, it was something much bigger. Elon Musk's team began looking into these claims, and what they found raised even more red flags. Some of the largest USAID programs had little to no public accountability. Money was flowing through complex networks, making it nearly impossible to track where it ended up. In some cases, aid packages never reached their intended recipients. Instead, they were intercepted, resold, or used for entirely different purposes. But beyond the financial waste, Paul raised an even bigger question. Was USID even legal? His argument was simple. Nowhere in the U.S. Constitution did it say taxpayer money could be used for foreign aid without direct approval. Unlike military spending, which had to be publicly debated and voted on, USAID's budget often operated in the shadows. American taxpayers had no real say in where their money was going. And according to Paul, that was a serious problem. Musk saw an opportunity here. If USAID was legally questionable, then any attempt to reform or dismantle it could gain major political traction. But at the same time, the pushback was growing stronger. USAID wasn't just another government agency. It was a massive institution with deep connections to the most powerful figures. Supporters of USAID argued that without it, global stability would be at risk. Millions relied on the agency's programs for food, clean water, and medical supplies. Cutting its budget or eliminating it altogether could create power vacuums in unstable regions. Others warned that reducing USAID's influence would only strengthen geopolitical rivals like China and Russia, who had their own aid programs designed to win allies. Musk wasn't convinced. If USAID was so important, then why did so many of its programs fail? Why did billions disappear with no clear results? These weren't minor bureaucratic issues. They were signs of something much bigger. The deeper he pushed, the more it became clear. There were people who didn't want this investigation to continue. That's when Ron Paul took things a step further. He didn't just question USAID's spending, he questioned its very existence. If the agency wasn't operating within constitutional limits, and if its programs were consistently failing, then why was it still being funded? Paul called for a complete reevaluation, arguing that the American people deserve to know exactly where their tax dollars were going. While USAID claims to be helping developing nations, Paul argues that without proper oversight, too much money is being wasted, misallocated, or even landing in the wrong hands. He's not alone in this concern. Investigations have shown that much of USAID's funding disappears into bureaucratic black holes, with little to no follow-up on how resources are used. In some cases, millions have gone to programs that never even got off the ground. For Paul, the solution is simple. Track every dollar and make sure it's being used for its intended purpose. One of the methods he suggests, blockchain technology. He acknowledges Elon Musk's idea of applying blockchain and its potential for transparency. Unlike traditional accounting systems, blockchain offers a tamper-proof way to monitor transactions in real time. Every dollar spent would be recorded on a transparent ledger, making it nearly impossible for funds to be misused without detection. With a system like this, USAID wouldn't just claim transparency, it would prove it. Paul also argues that local organizations should have a bigger role in handling aid. Instead of funneling money through large international groups, which often have high administrative costs, he believes working directly with smaller, community-driven initiatives would ensure aid actually reaches the people who need it. Ron Paul proposed an independent audit, one that would track USAID's spending in real time. If corruption or mismanagement was found, then serious cuts, or even a total shutdown, would be on the table. But if USAID refused to comply, that alone would be a major red flag. The pushback was immediate. Political leaders, foreign governments, and even high-ranking officials within the agency itself began pushing back against the idea. The battle over USAID's future was no longer just a policy debate. It was a fight over power, money, and control. If Elon Musk or Ron Paul succeeded in exposing what was really happening, it could change the way foreign aid was handled forever. But if they failed, it would send a clear message that even the most powerful voices couldn't challenge the system. It didn't look like this was going away anytime soon. The investigation was just beginning, and with every new piece of information that surfaced, the controversy only grew. Keep watching, you won't want to miss the next part. Influence on political affairs, aid, or political tool? For years, critics have argued that USAID is more than just an aid organization. It's a tool for political influence. While the agency promotes itself as a force for humanitarian relief, the reality is often more complicated. It has been accused of funding political parties, media outlets, and organizations that align with U.S. interests rather than genuinely helping nations develop on their own terms. This isn't just speculation. Time and time again, Countries that receive USAID funding experience sudden political shifts. Opposition parties gain access to large sums of money, allowing them to launch extensive campaigns, mobilize protests, and increase their influence. On the surface, this may look like support for democracy, but when aid consistently benefits only one side, it raises serious questions. A prime example is what played out in Ukraine, where USAID's financial support has often been linked to political groups favoring closer ties with the West. Pro-European parties have received significant backing, while those leaning toward Russia have been left out. This isn't just about development aid, it's about geopolitical influence, shaping governments to align with U.S. foreign policy goals. If USAID were truly neutral, wouldn't it distribute aid evenly rather than selectively empowering certain groups? This pattern has repeated across multiple countries, but it becomes even more concerning when considering how USAID has been tied to revolutions and regime changes. The Arab Spring is a key example. While the world saw these uprisings as organic movements, documents later revealed that USAID had been involved in training activists and funding organizations that played a role in destabilizing governments. Egypt's revolution in 2011 is particularly notable. While citizens believed they were fighting for freedom, reports suggest that many of the leading groups had received financial and logistical support through US-backed initiatives. When President Hosni Mubarak fell, the military stepped in, raising questions about whether the people had truly gained independence or had simply fallen into another form of control. The agency defends its actions by claiming it promotes democracy, not political manipulation. According to its officials, funding civil society groups, journalists, and activists strengthens democratic institutions. But how democratic is it when USAID only funds groups that serve U.S. interests? True democracy must grow from within a country, not be influenced from the outside. When USAID picks winners and losers, it creates an imbalance that often leads to unrest rather than stability. Instead of allowing nations to choose their own paths, critics argue that USAID effectively enables Washington to decide a country's future leadership. This isn't just a concern for foreign governments, it's a growing issue within the U.S. as well. More politicians are asking why American taxpayers are funding political interference abroad. If USAID is supposed to provide humanitarian relief, why does so much of its funding seem tied to political movements? Shouldn't foreign aid be about helping people, not controlling governments? Several cases have added fuel to the argument that USAID operates with political motives. In Bolivia, then-President Evo Morales expelled USAID in 2013, accusing it of working to undermine his leadership by funding opposition groups. In Cuba, the agency's efforts went beyond traditional aid, including projects like attempting to create a Cuban Twitter designed to promote anti-government sentiment. The growing scrutiny around USAID's actions has only intensified with Elon Musk and other high-profile figures calling for more transparency. If the agency is truly about helping nations develop, why are its actions so often linked to political shifts? Shouldn't aid be neutral, reaching all people in need rather than selectively empowering certain factions? Elon Musk has hinted that USAID's budget and activities need a closer examination. If billions are being spent under the banner of democracy promotion, the public deserves to know exactly where that money's going. And if the agency is indeed influencing elections, what does that mean for the future of global politics? The deeper one digs, the more questions arise. What exactly is the end goal of USAID's political involvement? And if these patterns continue, how many more nations will see their leadership influenced not by their own people, but by decisions made behind closed doors in Washington? What do you think? Is Elon Musk right? Should USAID be scrapped, or does it just need better oversight? Let us know in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.